Hey everybody, welcome to Common Censor. That was Pyre by Eleanor Goldfield. If you like the song, and I don't know why the fuck you wouldn't, get your shit together, all right? If you like the song, then check out her new album. It's called No Solo, her new EP. It's at artkillingapathy.com. And this is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other stuff, like my personal PR.
Yeah. I had to talk her. Well, not even talk her. I just said I'm doing this. I'm promoting your... I just announced your new album will be promoted.
I mean, I get it that it makes sense that the intro song should be a more recent song than one that was recorded 8 years ago by a band that doesn't exist anymore. I get that. I just,
Well, we might we'll feel it out. We'll see what people like, but we might make it a temporary thing, if people...
Well, no, I don't really care what people think.
Oh, okay. This is the new intro song.
Hey, look, if I'm the person who's got to edit this shit, I'm not going to keep switching the song back and forth. I'm making a template. I'm sticking with it. You get one song for at least a year, and that's it.
Wow. So far in the first 30 seconds, both you and I have screamed at the listeners. You motherfuckers! God damn it!
Well, mostly I was screaming at you.
Oh, at me. Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. I like attention of all forms. So... so that was No Solo. It's got 3 new songs on it, 2 spoken word pieces. It's at artkillingapathy.com. You should totally check it out and grab it. Also, before we get into topics, and by the way, we have some great topics coming up, but real quick, if you want to become a member of this show, this community, go to liberapay.com/LeeCamp. That helps us support the show. We have no ads, you might notice, for anything other than mentioning our stuff. There's no spoken ads. There's no pre-cut ads. There's no sponsors or ads on my website or Eleanor's website. So this is funded by you guys, and unfortunately, we don't quite have enough members to fully fund the show yet. Because we did the switch to Liberapay, but we're getting close. Anyway, it's liberapay.com/LeeCamp, LIBERAPAY.com/LeeCamp. Please check it out. And finally, we will have a live stream this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Write it in your calendars. It's at YouTube.
May 23rd.
It's at youtube.com/momentofclarity. All right, let's dig into this. We have gotten into Israel on other platforms, other outlets. All of them. We've talked about it on here. But I did think a slight update was warranted. Most of you have been keeping up with the horror show that is fucking Israel's attack on Palestine. I don't understand how anyone can fucking defend this anymore. I don't get it.
It's pretty remarkable.
It's insane.
And this, and I do hear from folks who are organizing specifically on this issue. I organize somewhat on this issue, but it's not like my entire life. And for people that do, I've heard from them that the tides are changing. Just 10 years ago, the idea that 30 members of Congress would sign on to say we want a ceasefire would have been absolutely unthinkable.
Right.
And this is, it's not like these kind of atrocities or anything new. They've happened in the past. But this is really the first time that there's been any sort of systemic pushback, even on a very low level. And it really speaks to the parallels between what happened in South Africa and the apartheid in South Africa. Nelson Mandela went from being a fucking terrorist, according to the United States, to being this beacon of justice and liberation. And, this pendulum does swing. It swings really fucking slowly because it's weighed down by a bunch of white supremacist, colonialist, imperialist assholes. But it do swing.
Yeah, he spent 30 years in jail probably thinking the pendulum was not swinging much. But I think it was 30 years, something like that. But all I was going to say is you said 30 members are now calling for a ceasefire. Not even saying, hey, what Israel's doing is a fucking crime against humanity. Some are doing that, a tiny handful. But most are just calling for a ceasefire.
Right.
Which is like, that is about the right percentage of people in Congress. What is that? Less than 10%. It's more like one out of every 15 or something. That is about the percentage of people in Congress, I would think, that have the slightest sliver of a remainder of like a fraction of a itty bitty piece of soul. Just like left in
That
them.
much, huh?
Yeah, like just a I'm not saying they have a soul. I'm just saying they have a little remainder sitting there that's like trying to hang on.
A puh of a soul. So yeah, and this story that just came down the pipe 4 hours ago doesn't speak to having any itty bitty left inkling of a soul left. Basically, the Democrats that were, lightly push. I'd say push is too strong of a verb. I'd say like.
May I suggest maybe if you care, perhaps you could have a ceasefire in Israel, perhaps. If you get around to, if in between the other things you do, I know you're very busy. I know that you're very busy. But in between the other things, that if you happen to have a second, and I can do that because I was born Jewish. So.
For those of you who don't know what the fuck that is, that's a sad rabbi voice.
You're only allowed to do the sad rabbi if you were born Jewish.
If you've had meetings with rabbis. If
you personally know rabbis, none of which that I knew actually talked like that, but
so oddly enough, my dad would go like straight into his Brooklyn accent whenever we would hang out or talk to the rabbi.
I was trying to fit in.
I don't know. It was kind of like like a mother hears a baby cry and her tits perk up. Like it's one of those things. It's just like he immediately like went into fucking like Brooklyn mode. I don't know.
Were your father's nipples hard when he talks to rabbis?
You know what? That's between him and the rabbi. Two consenting adults. I don't know. So wow, we went really quite off the rails there for a minute. Circling back,
I consider any nipple jokes on the rails. I consider those exactly where this show should be.
Most straight men would. So Democrats, like, a small handful of them, have abandoned their light ask to delay the Biden administration's arms sale to Israel, which is equal to $735 million. And just to recap, so Israel has been bombarding the shit out of Palestine, in particular Gaza, which
they've already killed over 200.
Is a open air prison. People can't escape. So it's not like, hey, let's flee our homes. They can't fucking leave. And Israel has been bombing the shit out of them with weapons from the United States. And Biden's response has been, let's get you some more weapons.
I can't remember where I heard this. Somebody made a good point that, people call it an open air prison, but in some ways prison is better because they are obligated to provide you with relatively clean water, relatively clean meals. I'm not saying prisoners get treated great. I'm saying there is some obligation. They're also lightly obligated to give you medical care and dental and stuff. So there is like there is some argument to be made that they have. I mean, prisons in the U.S. they have electricity 24/7. In Gaza, it's like 4 hours a day often.
Why don't we go with like a Swedish prison? Because American prisons, it gets very janky because most of them are built on fucking Superfund sites where if you have water, it's certainly not fucking clean. And the food is literally like the shit that the USDA was like, please don't feed this. Some of it actually, they've shown labeled not for human consumption.
Not for human consumption.
So
that was my favorite. John Kiriakou mentioned that. It's not for human consumption.
So let's go with like Swedish prisons that kind of look like an IKEA set.
Every photo I've seen of Swedish prison is somebody sitting at a picnic table.
But do they
outside?
Do they have the handy dandy IKEA lantern?
They might. Yeah. And of course, because it's IKEA, the picnic table falls apart after 10 minutes.
which is an affront to human rights, I'd just like to point out. No, but I mean, for all of its faults, which Sweden has a fuck ton, and it continues to accrue them like it's trying to win some sort of, we're the most like the U.S. Game of Trivial Pursuit in Europe. But the prisons are still very, or lightly handed, I guess, is a fair way of putting it.
Soft touch.
And so if we're gonna say like open air prison, then it's certainly not like Swedish prison. So really, yes, it should be called just. It's like a refugee camp.
Yeah.
Basically, with like really, really intense militarized barriers. Anyway.
Which it is a refugee camp because they were forced off their lands into Gaza. Almost everybody there is, unless they're first generation there, almost everybody there was not living there when they were forced, they were forced into Gaza.
So basically, Biden had, and this is so classic Democrat, Biden had offered to hold a, quote, informational session for lawmakers tomorrow, Wednesday the 19th, regarding the weapons sales, which I don't know what the fuck that means. It's basically like, I don't know, like a show and tell of like who gets bombed. I
have a question. Would Biden be there? And second question, would he know he's there?
Well, this is getting into some deep philosophical questions about Biden, which no one can answer, least of all Biden. But so basically this sounds like one of those moments where the Democrats get to say, hey, we held a informational session. So you can't get mad at us for selling, almost $800 million worth of weapons to an apartheid state because we held an informational session. But then House Foreign Affairs Committee Chair Gregory Meeks, a Democrat from New York, then said, you know what? We don't need the informational session. We don't need you to delay this arms sale. Let's just go. Let's sally forth. And by the way, I think it's also important to point out that it was never going to be like a kibosh. It was a delay, which I don't know what the fuck that means. That could mean like 4 hours. Right. That could mean a day. Like this is, again, the sort of posturing the Democrats are known for. We're going to look into it because we believe in human rights. And then they don't, but they still get to say, hey, we thought about it, right?
Bing. That was the next topic noise.
Oh, right. Move it along?
No.
Jeez. The Democrats might not be pushing, but you are.
I didn't mean you were talking too long on it. I just meant next topic.
Okay, well, next topic it is. And the next topic is, it's shitty. We're a bucket of laughs, folks. This next topic is terrifying and frightening on a lot of levels. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a major abortion case challenging Roe v. Wade. And this quote is from Yellow Fund, which is an abortion and reproductive. Wow. Hold on.
That sentence was aborted halfway through.
Yes, it was. A reproductive justice organization who also funds abortions in Alabama and the Deep South. And this Supreme Court case is about a case, basically the abortion ban case in Mississippi. And this quote is from Robin Marty, the Yellowhammer Fund's communications director, who says, quote, "If states are once again allowed to choose whether they want abortion to be a legal medical procedure, the result will be a matter of life and death for those of us who are here in the South." And, this follows, people may have, oh God, what is the name of that? Oh, there's a great documentary that talked about...
Bun in the oven?
That talked about abortion access, and I think it focused predominantly on the South. It's a few years old. I can't remember.
Yeah, because until now, the main goal of these, right-wing fanatics has just been to make it so difficult. And they come up with crazy shit like that a abortion provider has to have an ambulance or something, like utterly ridiculous stuff, even though it's a safer procedure than like your average tiny medical procedure at a hospital. So they would come up with stuff like that where these small providers couldn't possibly afford an ambulance of their own. So they were coming up with shit like that. Now they're trying to just basically ban it after 15 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, and the documentary I was talking about was thinking of is called Trapped. Great film, an important film. So yeah, basically the Supreme Court said that it would hear this challenge to Roe v. Wade and decide whether states can bar nearly all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The justices said that they had voted to hear an appeal from Mississippi that urges the court to, quote, reconsider the bright line viability rule, unquote, that says states may not prohibit abortions until the time a fetus is viable or capable of living on its own, and this is generally about the 23rd week of a pregnancy. Again, I'll say generally because, yeah, there are fetuses that come out around 23 weeks that don't survive on their own. There are still births at full term. And there are so many reasons why someone would have an abortion. The idea that women are just out to kill babies is fucking absurd. And it also flies in the face of science, which suggests that this cluster of cells is a fucking, human that is, ready to walk and talk and defend itself against the evil machinations of baby killers everywhere. So it's really, again, this isn't about women's health. It's certainly not about children, because if it were, then all of these same ass wipes would be up in arms about the fact that there's no child care. All of the children have been left behind.
That education is collapsing in this country.
Right. That on any given night, hundreds of thousands of children are going hungry or are homeless, that live in extreme poverty in the richest country in the world. And it's certainly obviously not about women either, because if that were the case, then you'd make sure that women's health were, a priority for you in your campaign, which is obviously not the case.
Not to mention these evangelical Christians, such as Bush, Pompeo, Pence, etc. They're also, some of the most full-throated supporters of bombing children around the world. They are obliterating children on a daily basis. Women, children, they don't give a shit. They're bombing the fuck out of, 7 countries right now, and they're also killing women and children with economic war, such as in Venezuela. So the idea that they give a tip of a turd about a child is hilarious. These guys don't even know their kids' names.
They live in their 5th or 6th house. They've lost all track of them. They're now basically feral. And this issue, besides being horrifying just on a state level, it raises a lot of questions federally. So the question, I'm looking at a LA Times article that brought up these points. For instance, could the court adopt a new constitutional limit that protected legal abortions through the 15th week of a pregnancy, or would doing so implicitly invite conservative states to set even earlier cutoffs, thereby going against Roe v. Wade? And if so, the court would set the stage to limit the right to abortion for women and also potentially to repeal Roe v. Wade outright. So this is a big fucking deal, and something that people really need to pay attention to and stand up for reproductive rights and the ability for us all to make decisions about our own bodies and what is best.
And this might be a good time, because I feel like it's always a good time anytime these incredibly important issues come before the Supreme Court, and everyone yells, "Oh, this is why you should have voted for Trump, not voted for Trump or whatever, because of the people on the Supreme Court." The Supreme Court is an incredibly undemocratic fucking oligarchy setup. All right, it is the elite rulers putting fellow elite rulers into the position of the holiest, most supreme court in the land that can never be challenged, can never be checked, and they can stay on that bench until they die, sometimes thereafter as well. And it's like that's how the Supreme Court should be talked about, as an incredibly undemocratic, fucked up institution, rather than all these people who want to say you have to vote for, the Democrats because of the Supreme Court. Well, I might listen to someone who was saying that if they weren't also fawning over how wonderful the Supreme Court is, how important it is, how oh my God, Supreme Court. Let's talk about how fucking disgusting it is, how it is the ruling elite making an institution that is meant to back up and support all of essentially anything they want across this country. So that is what our Supreme Court is. It is a kind of final check for the ruling elite to make sure that their choice opinions are what gets passed through the court. Now, you do have differences in the ruling elite at times, such as abortion, but on the areas where the ruling elite all agree, such as letting Wall Street exploit every fucking person in the country, or having tens of millions of poor people so that the rich can be unbelievably rich, on those type of things, the Supreme Court is not. It's not even a question, it's basically 9-0 or 8-1 or whatever.
Well, and I also think it's important, and yeah, what you're talking about is something that, we've talked about before, not least of all with the things like the Powell memo that basically drew up a blueprint for how to stack the court full of business-friendly interests, which is, of course, what we have today. Also, it's a good time to point out that nowhere does it say that there have to be 9 justices. And Biden could very easily just be like, look, I want to add some more justices. And that would, he's got control of the Senate, and just the idea of putting that forward would be a powerful move that would challenge the, no pun intended, the supremacy of the Supreme Court, and really say, like, why do we let 9 fucking people, most of them old assholes,
for their whole life, decide
the fate of millions? They're not elected. They're not accountable to the people. It is the most undemocratic bullshit. And so this would be a great time if the Democrats really cared about reproductive rights. It would be a great time to put forward something like this. But of course, they're not going to, because they don't actually give a flying fuck about reproductive rights. And also, it's a good time to point out that if you look at the Supreme Court's history, it's largely just been reactionary, which means that it's been there to avoid ceding power to the people. It's been there to avoid, these important, what is it called? Important progress in society. So,
well, at times when they go with the progress, it's because it was the progress had gotten to a point that it was making the establishment untenable.
Exactly, that's my point. So people will point to gay marriage, for instance. Well, popular opinion, even among conservatives at that point, had gotten so far to the point where it was just like, I don't care, fucking get married. And it was really a minority that was still like, oh my God, you're going to burn in hell, and I really have to know what's going on in your bedroom because I'm a creepy fuck. That was a real minority. And so the Supreme Court, everybody like waving rainbow fucking flags outside the Supreme Court, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because the Supreme Court was only doing what the government had basically decided, well, we have to move on this because it's so past time to address this issue. And same, we're going to talk about marijuana, and the Supreme Court hasn't said anything about marijuana, but we see with states, this is flipping, not because the states are like, yeah, we really believe in the power and the beauty of this plant. They're doing it because people are like, people have been pushing for so long and so hard that it's becoming untenable to not do something. So it's really important to put the Supreme Court in context and understand like the workings and the gears of this shitty authoritarian institution, and also speaks to the importance of really supporting and uplifting the voices of organizations, particularly on local and state levels, that are working for reproductive rights. So yeah.
Bing.
Am I taking too long? Am I boring y'all?
No, I just did. I realized we needed a
Pretty
bing.
soon I'm gonna get the Jeopardy song.
I was trying to help the show. I wasn't saying you went on too long.
Well, this is a short one. Tomorrow.
Okay, bing.
Tomorrow, May 19th, McDonald's workers are going on strike. Because the company announced a raise for less than 5% of their U.S. locations, which is some bullshit. And Fight for 15 and other supporters of the strike are demanding at least $15 an hour for
I would have
every
thought
worker.
McDonald's would have been really at the top of the list of wonderful workplace.
I know, it's shocking.
Situations. I would imagine that spending 42 hours a day putting pink mystery meat into a deep fryer would for $8 an hour would have. I would think the workers would be delighted. I don't understand. I just don't get it.
I know,
I don't understand why they would. I don't understand why they would. Why they would do that? Why interrupt something so beautiful and loving as McDonald's?
Beautifully said.
The meals have a box with a smile on it, for fuck's sake.
Isn't that just the Happy Meal?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been so long since I've gone to McDonald's, I don't actually know what the fuck the packaging looks like anymore. I deeply remember what the insides look like. Ugh.
Bing? Inside of the Bing? Inside of the mystery meat or inside of the restaurants?
Yes.
The locations?
Yes. And the workers. No, I'm kidding.
I don't know what you've been doing at McDonald's, but
that turned American Psycho real fast. Okay, so something that we've talked about on the show before is the concept of like a stopgap measure. And this is something that people on the left...
Because they use fucking child slavery to make their clothing, so I'd say yeah. Let's do it. Let's stop
All
gap.
right. Not that stop gap.
Oh.
Stop -gap.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we tape this over? I'm so sorry.
Nope. Just keep it in there. If anyone's making a blooper reel for Common Censor, please include that.
I'm gonna be outside tomorrow with a big sign that says "Stop gap now! Stop gap now!"
So stopgap measures are basically refer to things that are like Band-Aids on the gangrenous, cancerous, pus-soaked body politic that is our system.
That sounds like what falls into the deep fryer at McDonald's.
Yeah, it's very similar. So it's the idea that things like higher wages or health care benefits and things like that, they're not going to address the deep systemic rot of capitalism or white supremacy or things like that, but they will save lives and they will make people's lives better, and in the short term that is something to fight for. So this is something that's a bit like that. And I don't usually talk about legislation because most of it is balls, to be honest. But this one actually has some teeth. It's called the PRO Act. And basically what it is an act that addresses labor rights. And, I mean, shocking.
So what I hear you saying is this won't get through. Because you're like, this actually sounds like a good thing for America.
I know. So the full name is the Protecting the Right to Organize Act of 2021. And it's the first major worker-friendly labor law since 1935.
Oh, my God.
I'll say that again. It's the first major worker-friendly labor law since 1935.
That's so long ago that people had, we all have our cell phone on our hip now. People had gramophones just attached to their hip back then. It's still been a long time. It's been a long time.
Not even. They had, little flutes that they would call and respond to one another.
Right. Right.
They were still using calls of the wild, like little bird sounds and things.
Yeah.
So
and every once in a while there'd be someone with like a pigeon strapped to their belt.
Some people were still walking on all fours. It was a long time ago. That's all I'm saying.
And you'd be with a friend and his pigeon would keep going off and you're like, can you shut that thing off? Shut it off. What? I need to find out what the little note wrapped around his ankle says.
Okay, but real quick, can we bring back carrier pigeons? Because
they're adorable.
I would just love if someone sent me a pigeon.
My God. Honestly, you had the little thing on the ankle, and then if we just had a bow tie, I mean, who would be opposed to that? Who would be opposed to that?
Probably the pigeon, but so anyway, the PRO Act.
They like to have jobs. They can help them get, they'll probably save up a little money, get an IRA or something, and
get a nice little birdhouse.
Yeah,
with a yard.
Yeah.
So the PRO Act would basically significantly expand and protect workers' ability to join and organize unions, and it would level heavy penalties on employers who stand in their way. Cough. Amazon is like the most recent big story on that front.
Right. Uber.
This would also override a federal override of right to work laws. And that's fucking huge.
Wow.
Right to work laws, for those who don't remember, who aren't familiar, that's a stupid fucking name, like they all are. And it's basically an anti-union bill. It says like that workers don't have a right to organize. So it's the right to work for slave wages and not complain about it.
Yeah, I know. It really is the right to work for less, the right to be, the right to work while abused. I mean, it truly is. So this sounds like this thing could actually.
There's more.
Huh?
There's more about it.
Well, I'm gonna let you say that.
Okay.
I was just gonna say real quick that it sounds like this thing would be positive for American workers. So I'm guessing 1/4 of Democrats support it.
Okay, can I just get through talking about how great it is first?
Sometimes I like to say something. I'm allowed to talk too, Jeez.
But I'm on a roll here, man.
You're the one with all the info. I got to throw in comments.
I put the link in the Google Doc for you. Sheesh. So it would also it would end the 1947 Taft-Hartley Act, which banned secondary strikes, which are also known as solidarity strikes, which are basically collective actions that employees in different industries or workplaces undertake in order to show solidarity for another group of workers on strike. And it would also update the union election process in order to allow workers to vote online or by phone. Hello, 21st century. It would provide enhanced protections for whistleblowers and a response to the issue of worker misclassification that would give independent contractors basic labor rights and the right to organize collectively, which is huge because these days most people are, or not most people, but a shit ton of people are independent contractors. And I'm not just talking about like your Lyft drivers and things like that. The Nation, which also printed a story about this, talked about one woman who worked for who was it? Hold please.
Rosie the Riveter.
No, she worked for Comcast.
Damn it.
And she actually worked like in their offices for 4 years, but she was connected to a temp agency. So technically Comcast never hired her. And this is something that these big corporations do quite frequently. They will hire you through a temp agency. And it's not temporary. They can hire you for as long as they fucking want. But what it means is that they don't have to give you the basic protections and benefits that come with being hired by the company themselves. So when we're talking about contract workers, we're not just talking about the people who do Uber Eats and shit. Not like it wouldn't be enough to just talk about those people, but when like your visual of contract workers should be so much wider than I think for most people it is, because we just don't think of it that way. Like, if you go into a building every day that says Comcast in big lettering, most people are like, oh, you work for Comcast.
Right.
But alas, no.
They get around a lot of things by having contract workers and shit like that. Yeah.
Right. So this would address that issue. At least partially. It would also outlaw captive audience meetings, which is a union-busting tactic that is actually legal right now, which is mandatory meetings where anti-union consultants are brought in to lecture workers about why unions are terrible.
Right, and like they can't leave; they have to sit
Right.
there and take it in. And you know, these are specialists. These are specialists in manipulation. Like it actually is an art. I mean, unfortunately, we all like to think we're so smart, and if people are smart enough, then they'll just know what's bullshit and what's not. No, that's bullshit. Actually, it is an art to manipulate people, and they bring in the best you can imagine, who are flown around the United States to corner these people in a room and talk at them for probably upwards of hours, and make them think that joining a union would destroy their lives and their livelihood, which of course is bullshit.
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned Amazon. Amazon workers in Bessemer say that they were pulled into meetings like this multiple times a week and chastised for speaking out against the anti-union messaging. So again, Amazon was paying, these are like highly paid consultants, like $10,000 a day.
Yeah.
So Amazon is putting out $10K a day, in a few meetings like that a week. That's like 30 grand just in order to not pay workers more and avoid benefits. Like, it's remarkable.
The big corporations like Amazon and Walmart will parachute in these guys.
Yeah.
Like literally, I like to picture them with parachutes just landing on the front lawn, running, releasing the parachute as they go, and they come running in to basically attack workers that might be considering maybe having a union so that they have some power, so that they can maybe get 25 cents more an hour, so that they can maybe afford daycare so their kid doesn't end up being a fucking douche-tard.
Yep.
Technical terminology.
So there's one more thing, and then I'll get into who doesn't like it. So it's called card check, and this is something that would have allowed, Bessemer to unionize pretty fucking easily and quickly. And it's basically a mechanism that allows a union to be certified if a simple majority of employees at a workplace sign union cards. So it's basically like a quick and easy to check vote. Sign this fucking card and we've got a union. And it's really that simple. So now the legislation has already cleared the House, and it's in the Senate, where there are 3 Democratic senators who still haven't signed on to the bill. And of course, it's pretty much a given that 50 Republicans will vote against it as a block. So the challenge is to get it past there and onto Biden's desk. And folks are saying we need a miracle. Big unions, which are really corporate unions, but for some reason they like this. The AFL-CIO has been rallying their membership around the bill, as have smaller unions. And yeah, it's this bill is one of those stopgap measures that could do a lot for millions of workers around the country. And I hadn't even heard of it until like a week ago, and this shit has been around now for a few months, and it really just goes to show you
mainstream media,
but
even many independent,
yeah, it's just there's this. I feel like on the left, there's oftentimes this thing like if we're talking about a stopgap measure, if we're talking about legislation, fuck it, because it doesn't go far enough.
Well, also this is something that's been annoying to me, is that many on the independent media left think that, and I think it comes down to the views on YouTube. They don't know how much it's influencing them, but they think that every story needs to be about going at either a mainstream media character or a Democrat character or even sometimes a Republican, but it always has to be going at people. because that's what gets the views and the hits, and that's what's entertaining to people. And I certainly do it some of the time. I mean, I've done plenty of takedowns, but they therefore have a blind spot for things that are not going at someone. So for this, PRO act, it is, let's just talk about this act. Let's talk about what's in it. Let's talk about what it means. And to them, many on the independent left, that's less interesting, or they know it won't get views or that many views. It's kind of what I think is similar with climate change. It's like I keep covering climate change, but every time I put up a climate change video, it's going to get 1/10 what other videos will get. And I know that, but I'm going to keep covering it because we're all going to fucking die if we don't do something about it. So it's like, you've got to be willing to chase these things and these stories even when they're not the snazzy, glitzy, oh, Tucker Carlson did bliggity blue, which I have done. But I didn't do it because it was glitzy. I did it because he's a fucking asshole. But
and that bears repeating. Yeah, and so for the record, if you live in Arizona or Virginia, you can go harass your senators. Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat from Arizona, Kirsten Sinema, and Virginia's Mark Warner.
Cinema.
Oh, sorry, Sinema. And Virginia's Mark Warner are the three Democrats that have not signed on to the bill. So I don't know, knock on some doors, yell at some senators,
See if you can get this thing through. And speaking of this being a stopgap, I would, if I were talking about long term, where we want to see ourselves, and I've covered this before, so this is nothing, I'm not revealing anything new, but it's to get to a place where we're hardly working at all, where we're hardly wage slaves at all. This doesn't mean you couldn't work towards your passion. This doesn't mean you couldn't still write books or be a lawyer if you enjoyed that, or et cetera, et cetera. But we wouldn't be enslaved to these jobs, and we could be very close to that even now, but it doesn't even get talked about. And so we need to talk about that while still fighting for things like $15 an hour, like people being allowed to unionize. So, yes, you have to fight for these stopgaps. You have to fight for these things that are progress, even if they're not the big, grand, let's get past wage slavery. And there are those who, are kind of oblivious to that. They think, I'm not going to fight for $15 an hour because I want to fight for a world without wage slavery. And it's like, well, let's be honest. That's not happening in the next 5 years. And so that means 5 years. For the next 5 years, even if we're just looking 5 years ahead, that means for the next 5 years, people are going to fucking earn nothing because we didn't fight for better wages.
Yeah, putting these things in context, I think, is helpful, and understanding that there is some good to come of these so-called stopgap measures. So, the PRO Act, check it out.
Bing.
Bing. Is it Bing or Ping?
I was pretty excited for Bing.
Okay, I'm feeling ping personally.
Ping. People use that for like, I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna ping you.
If anybody ever told me they were gonna ping me, I just punch them and leave.
So I've had several people say that to me. I did punch them. It didn't go over well, but
I'm gonna ping you. You know what that reminds me of? Well, you're not gonna get this joke. Never mind. It's a Swedish thing, so no one actually listening would understand
all
it.
All you Swedish listeners, we do have a few.
Well, okay. It's basically like when the Swedes will take something and like make it English, but it fucks it up and it makes it just really annoying. So instead of saying I'll call you, jag ringer dig, så säger de jag fånar dig. And that is so fucking annoying. And no one listening, I guarantee maybe my mother understands what the fuck I'm talking about.
You mean they insert the word phone? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So they inserted the English word phone. It's
I'll phone you,
which
like, is British English.
It's like Swinglish.
Which is so and it's always like these trendy people who use it, and I just want to slap them. Anyway, that's a completely separate conversation. So
speaking of measures that don't get all the way there, but start to get closer to where we want to be, Alabama, the governor of Alabama just signed legislation legalizing medical marijuana.
Whee!
And you were just looking it up before. There's only 5 states that still don't have medical marijuana out of 50, which I get. Medical marijuana is not all the way there. Marijuana should be legalized. Absolutely. The drug world is a fucking sham. Not just a sham. It's a fucking crime against humanity. The number of people locked up, the number of people whose lives have been destroyed over it. For what? Getting a little loopy? Fuck you. So it's, and honestly, there's a lot of racism involved in it too. But so it is a step in the right direction that almost all of the states have legalized medical marijuana. And the reason I get that some people, even way back, 15 years ago when there was hardly any with medical marijuana, they felt that fighting for medical marijuana was it was a waste of time because it wasn't getting all the way there to marijuana legalization. But what it did was having that discussion allowed those people across America, and there were a lot of them, who the idea of any marijuana legalization was so horrifying to them because they had believed all the bullshit propaganda that this is a horrible drug, destroys lives, can't ever, the moment someone uses it, they become a monster like Hannibal
Oh my God, those
Lecter.
ads on TV when we were kids, like,
marijuana
that was not
madness,
that long ago.
Marijuana madness or whatever it was called. So people believe that, but the medical marijuana discussion allowed them to talk about it it allowed them to progress their mind beyond just and it allowed them to start to have that discussion. And then they started maybe meeting people who had been helped by marijuana, or cannabis or even the various oils and things that
CBD.
CBD and everything that doesn't get you high. It's just helpful in other regards. And it kind of helped progress their minds to the point now that we have 45 states where it's legalized.
Yeah, it's so also, just as a side note, Puerto Rico has a status of medical use, and Guam allows recreational use. So just in case you were curious where the imperial holdings stand, not that the U.S. as a whole isn't an imperial holding, but that's a little piece of trivia. And there's also several states where it's decriminalized. So I'm not going to count because I can't do that and talk at the same time. But weednews.co has a map where you can look at and see like the status in each state.
I love that they call it weed news. I feel like that's where I'd go when I wanted somebody writing like, breaking news, I went to the store and got a Slurpee. Woo! Like, fucking...
The new strawberry Pop-Tarts are not as good as the old ones.
News at 11! Like, that's what I would think weed news would be, so I love that they have that.
The stereotypes. So it has a map that just shows where it's, and it has like the status bar. So recreational is like all the way to where it should be. And then it has medical, which is like halfway. And then decriminalized, which is 3/4 of the way. Mm-hmm. Which basically means like it's not fully legal to use it recreationally, but if they find you smoking on the sidewalk, they're not gonna, throw you in jail for 10 years.
Yeah, like DC, we're in DC, it's decriminalized. So
it's recreational actually in DC.
Is it?
Yeah.
Was it decriminalized?
It was
for a bit?
decriminalized, I think, like when we moved here.
Oh, okay. So that's what I was thinking of. It became decriminalized, and I remember so people started smoking more often on like sidewalks and stuff. And I remember asking, it was like after a taping of Redacted, I was like, what are the rules now? And they were like, well, you can smoke. And I was like, so you just light up right here? And they were like, well, no, you got to go around the corner. And I was like, the law is you got to go around the corner? Like, what the fuck kind of law is that? They're basically like, you don't stand in front of a shop. Just take it in the back.
Well, so in Maryland, it's decriminalized. So I think that might be, what you were thinking of, or like still the status in Maryland. In Virginia, it's medical. But I heard from a friend that they were pushing to at least decriminalize it as well there. But either way, so when we talk about DC, we're also talking about Maryland and Virginia. The DMV area is what it's called because literally I could ride my bike and in, 30 minutes I'd be in Maryland. In maybe like an hour I'd be in Virginia on my bike. So we're really close. So these things are also things to consider. And of course, they make it like a real pain in the ass if you're one state, like Colorado, which is, to take a cliche example, is surrounded by states that only have medical use or have like an entire illegal status. So
you got to drive
except for
an
New
hour.
Mexico to the south, which is decriminalized. So Kansas to the east is medical. Utah to the west is medical. Wyoming and Nebraska are just totally illegal. So, you just go get gas across state lines and you've got like a little fucking,
Oh my God.
bowl in your car.
I bet the gas stations are wild across the state line. You just get across, it's just a bunch of people partying, all smoking up.
Which I don't recommend you do at a gas station necessarily, but and here's some more trivia for y'all. If you want to play this at your next weed party, the 5 states where it is still entirely illegal are Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Indiana.
Yeah, Indiana, there's some right-wing fucks in Indiana.
I was really surprised that Alabama was like the last vestige of the Southeast. I mean, most of the Southeast is just medical. It's really only North Carolina where it's decriminalized, south of D.C. But I was kind of shocked that there weren't more states in the South that were just a full no.
So I guessed Wyoming. It's those religious states, although Utah weirdly is fairly progressive on that. But yeah, it says
Well,
I don't know.
Utah has a medical.
Indiana's just maniacs. It's Pence and shit. It's crazy. It's like NASCAR, hamburgers, and just loads of Jesus.
I don't know. I mean, the home of NASCAR is in fucking North Carolina, so
I'm pretty sure they have. Yeah, but what's the Indy 500 is?
I don't know what the fuck the difference is.
Indianapolis.
It's a bunch of cars driving around in a circle for like 8 hours.
It's got the word Indy in it, though.
That's the only reason you know where it is.
Of course.
Cool. So, ping and
Bing.
Ping, and what's the end sound?
What?
What's the end sound for
the end of the show? Well, we're not there yet.
Yes, we are.
No, I got a few more minutes.
Am I getting paid overtime for this?
Trust me. You are getting paid overtime. Let's just squeeze one more topic in here.
You squeeze.
Okay, maybe I will. Chilean voters elected a progressive alliance. That's pretty cool, to rewrite the Pinochet-era constitution, which we've talked about that constitution before on the show.
Neoliberal.
They've been living under this far right-wing constitution for decades, and it's pretty horrific. So, and this has come about due to like really large-scale protests. I mean, it's people in the streets.
Yeah, and there's some. So the writing will happen next year, but the questions now are basically like what kind of coalitions. There's center left that won seats. There's a left that won seats. There's independents that won seats. The ruling party, Vamos, got far less than they intended, which is great because they were basically like the neolib party. So the question now is basically where our alliance is going to be made, but
Right.
But the general consensus is that neoliberalism or Chile will be the grave of neoliberalism, which is a beautiful bookend, because Chile, the coup that happened there, September 11th, 1973, that ousted and murdered democratically elected leftist President Allende, was really kind of a trial space for neoliberalism, thanks to the Chicago School of Economics and that whole Monroe Doctrine imperialist bullshit. So for that then to come full circle to be the grave of neoliberalism is a beautiful concept. And so, huge congrats to all the folks in Chile and all the people who have worked in really strong solidarity with them. That's it's a beautiful beacon, particularly in times that have felt pretty dark.
Yeah, absolutely. See how beautifully you did that? I can't believe you're going to rob these lovely listeners of that. So thank you guys so much for being here. As I said at the beginning, if you like the new theme song, go grab the EP. It just came out, artkillingapathy.com. The song you heard was a little bit of Pyre, but it's 3 new songs, 2 new spoken words, and it's just a $6. It's pay what you will, but $6 recommended donation or above. And yeah, that's at artkillingapathy.com. If you want to become a member of the show and support the show, because we have no sponsors, no corporate puppeteers, then go to liberapay.com/LeeCamp, liberapay.com/LeeCamp. And finally, 8 p.m. this Sunday, we have a live stream coming up. We'd love to hang out with you, 8 p.m. Eastern, by the way. So please join us at youtube.com/momentofclarity. Anything else you'd like to throw in there?
Check out Lee's stuff at leecamp.com.
Thank you.
Rad new site, really cool design, and makes all of his amazing content easier to access. And you've got Government Secrets with Graham Elwood. You've got, of course, Moment of Clarity, which you already mentioned. And
You're
of course,
doing all my promo. I love it.
Redacted Tonight. Well, I mean,
did
that's
to
only fair.
I don't know what I did to deserve it.
And of course, Redacted Tonight, which is fucking rad. So check that out. And you have some really great interviews coming up this week. One in particular about Colombia, what's going on there.
Yep.
So
Colombia, Gaza.
Yeah.
Check it out.
And on that note, everyone, stay safe out there and act out.
Keep fighting.